how many sestertii were being sent to the subcontinent without coming back. So there is definitely a history of the metal moving there that predates double entry bookkeeping.
There's a very interesting book on this from Niall Ferguson, as you may know this one. And he actually shows all this, what you mentioned now, and I think from the beginning from the ending of the Roman Empire, they also had a structural trade deficit, especially to the Arabian countries, and this lack of gold and silver was the result in Europe, led to the Crusades, apparently, because there was a need of medium of exchanges and what. So structural trade deficit was actually the reason for that, because they weren't competitive after.
Well, maybe double entry bookkeeping was a necessity after all the gold had been drained away. You can only trade on the residual.
And I think Europe, what Ferguson argues is Europe only really came out of this slump when the silver and gold came in from America, because then you had sufficient medium of exchanges again.
Do you have any definite idea? Because ultimately, of course, India also embraced the double entry bookkeeping. There was a lag. The West was very quick. The East was much slower. What this lag was?
I would say, English East India Company was there from mid-17th century. Definitely by the early 18th century, it would have been prevalent.
And before the East India Company started?
I wouldn't know how they kept their accounts prior to that.
But obviously, it was not.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
And that's in China very similar. You see, and we are going to talk about this more. But I think it's relevant to point out here that you see, China was very hungry of silver because they were on the silver standard. The gold was also known and exchanged, but the money was silver in China since time immemorial.
Same in India.
Same in India. But now I'm talking about China. And the West, which was very mercantilistic minded, looked with a jaundiced eye at China, that they were accumulating. I mean, they were just absorbing silver. Silver was a one-way flow of silver from the West to China. Now we have seen that they could afford it, but at one point they said, well, now that's not going to continue, and you just have to come up with something to buy from us. And there was a reluctance because they just didn't want anything. And then when they hit on opium, you see, the West, and this is a very, very shameful chapter of Western civilization, because they used the slogan of free trade. Yes, we have the right to sell opium to the Chinese, and they bought the opium very cheap in India and shipped it to China. And then the Chinese made laws against opium products, and the response was war, and actually 2 wars, and that was already in the 19th century. And these wars ended with a very humiliating, both wars, very humiliating defeat for the Chinese Empire. And they made these unequal treaties with the Chinese. And but this is really something I will come back later to discuss. So, no more questions?
Any more?
I have one question. Is there any evidence of real bills in the East emerging at some time?
I wouldn't know. But I know that real bills were certainly around before they were made active in Italy. But whether it was in the East specifically, I couldn't say. Real bills were spontaneous.
So
you
that's
know,
why I'm asking if they would have existed separately from the Italians and the French.
I don't know. Maybe. I'd have to research it.
But remember, real bills are really short-term instruments. They well, that may be a reason that because of the long lines of communication. But anyhow, we just don't know. It's an interesting subject to research. So I just want to summarize in the last 2 or 3 minutes. Remember, we started studying the origin of interest, and we found the principal cause of interest appearing is a biological fact which affects us all. And this is the problem of aging. We, as human beings, are all getting older. And as we do, we started out with a surplus of income because of the being energetic and innovative and young, and we could generate a bigger income than what we need to survive. So that income, even if you are penniless, that extra income, surplus income, is available for you to exchange for wealth, which you can invest in a way that you become your own boss and very much more prosperous than without. And the problem is that even though you could generate, or use the word, we have been using convert, income into wealth, this is time consuming. You hoard. And then in your harvest years you dishoard. But the problem is that you are wasting your best years in hoarding. Not much imagination. So the exchange presents itself as the solution to that. You can telescope that time period which would be necessary for you to hoard enough wealth in order to start your own business. It's a waste for you and for society. So if you bring in the exchange of wealth and income, then you have solved that problem, because you can start your own business much earlier. You skip that period of hoarding, which is time consuming. And that is the real explanation for the origin. And I am sorry to say, in the literature which I have perused and tried to find, I just didn't find that. But this is almost crying for the fact, this biological fact. No exception, every one of us subject to that. So this is something very, very plausible. And how come that hundreds and even thousands of years of economics, because we can say economic science started with Aristotle. Nobody came up with the idea that that's the reason we are getting older. And that's a problem. It's inescapable. I mean, we certainly need food and shelter and clothes and so on to exist. That this is obvious. But that we need the exchange of wealth and income because we are getting older, and that's just a natural, very natural demand, right after the need for food, shelter, and so on. So, okay, it's 12 o'clock, and in the afternoon it will be Keith. Very interesting topic. So don't miss Keith's contribution. I'm myself looking forward to hear that.
Great. Thanks very much, Professor.